Okay, so what I did here was I rolled out a slab of clay, and while it was wet, I put a stencil down. The stencil is, you can find it on Sharon Hoppy Designs. It's, of course, it's a little bit smaller now that it's shrank as it's drying. Anyway, put it down onto the wet clay, rolled over it with a what's called a pony roller. It's like one of the smaller rollers to embed it into the clay. And then I took CS 618 pumpkin and put it over it while the stencil was still down. Okay. So then I took a fan brush and the orange and I went over the whole thing 3 times. After it was dry, then I lifted the stencil out. So now this is what I've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade with some burnt sienna, I think is what I'm going to start with. I'm going to use a number 10, 6200, number 10. Always wet your brush first. Blot out the moisture just to make sure that brush is conditioned. Move my palette over. Okay, so once again, I'm going to drag my brush off the side of my water bowl and I'm going to corner load about a third of the bristles and I'm going to blend and blend. I'm going to re-corner the same corner and blend again. Okay, so I want this up next to where the crevices are. So I'm going to attempt to follow that line that the stencil, now that color is raised on here. So it does kind of present a little bit of a issue. Now I can scratch off anything that gets down into the negative space there where the stencil is. Okay. If I don't want it to show. Okay. But if I just kind of leave it there, then it would just be some added shading. So I used Color Stroke, which is the opaque underglazes, for the background. And then now I'm using the Color Concentrates, CC 186 Burnt Sienna, for my, because it's translucent. I want it translucent. I just want to add some shading in those crevices. Okay, so I'm going to go up here. And just keep working that color. Okay, so I'm going back and I'm putting this kind of down in that groove there. And then I'm going to load again. I'm going to turn the brush over, or I can just turn my piece around, either one. I'm pressing all the way down on the bristles so that they will fan out and that color will go from solid out to the water on the edge. You need to take your time when you're doing this. Don't get in a hurry. Now we've just got a little sliver down here, so I'm just going to kind of be on the edge of the brush. I'm constantly loading my brush, water load, corner in the color. I'm just going back and reinforcing that. Now, on your center section, you could shade one side. I think I'm going to shade this side because I want to leave all the texture for the spider web. Now this is still in the clay form, so I can always do more to it when I bisque it. Can also take a damp brush and a clean damp brush and push that color back to where it needs to be. Okay, I like that. Debating whether I should do that side also. So we've got Little Pumpkin over here. Should be able to do the same brush. And I used white porcelain for my clay body. You could shade along the stem. I'm going to get a smaller square shader. So this one is a number 6. Okay, and you could keep going. I mean, you could shade the leaves also. To do that though, I'm going to use the small sumi brush, water load, dried off to a point, tip into the color, and then tuck that color where you want it. So I'm going to tuck it in the points and then just bounce it as if I were sumi shading. So sit it down, mush, 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 walk it to the right and walk it to the left. It's easier to get in those points with the sumi. Have a little more control with that. All right. You know, you could keep going. You could do something to the spiders if you wanted. I'm going to put a little bit more brown in that leg of him. It's just really what you want to do with it. I was thinking about putting some red. I think I'll put a red dot on the spiders. So this is 111 red geranium. And let's see, I want a smaller dot. I'm just going to use the end of my brush. I've got a little spot over here I need to touch up. Some of that original orange. Then I'll go around the edge. Okay, so I think I want to do maybe some brown and red, just leaves on the edge. Maybe I'll make them come out from underneath. Okay, I'm going to use the number 6. So I'm going to fully load it in the red, which is the 111 red geranium that I used on the spiders. And then I'm going to corner load. Remember to keep the writing of the brush towards you. Corner load in the brown. Do that a couple of times. Nope. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So these are going to be leaves. So what I did was just kind of lay out my design just to visually see if that's what I wanted to do. I'm keeping the brown to the stem. These are just a wedge stroke, and I've showed this in quite a few other videos. If you're not familiar with it, it's a square shader, and you just press, slide, and come off the chisel edge. Cute. Then we'll put the vines in. All right, so on the top up here, I'll just put 2 on each side. Okay. So what I did was just stick with the same 2 colors so that I wasn't introducing a new color into the design. And for my leaves. Okay, and now I'm going to get my liner brush. See which one I want. And I'm going to take some of that brown. And I've got the Kolinsky 3600. This is a 0. Normally I use a 2, and I don't have my 2 handy, so we're going to use this one. Okay, so I slightly thinned my brown with the water. Remember, the more pressure you put down, the thicker the line will be. So I'm going to press and then lift up so I get thick and thin. Got a little tail. Constantly reloading. Okay. I mean, you could do more. I'm going to just bring one off of here. Just to kind of fill in that gap. Okay. I did not put my stamp on the back of this one, so I will sign it on the back. The color concentrates will not stick to your shelf, but they can leave what I call a footprint, meaning whatever you put back there, you may see the image on your shelf. So if you don't want that, don't put color concentrates on the bottom. Never put color strokes on the bottom, because the color strokes have a touch of glaze in them and they will stick to your shelf. Okay, I think that's pretty cool. You could, I mean, you could come back with black if you wanted, but I think I'll fire it and see what it looks like, and then come back and revisit whether I need to add some black, like on the spider body. I might do that, but I'm going to wait and do it in bisque. Okay, I am going to I'm going to trim it in the red, the 111. And to do that, I'm going to use a 1-inch foam brush. You're staying just on the little pointed. Don't do it back here. You're just going to hold it just like this, where you're up against that side. Okay, slightly thin. So what I did was just put some water in my brush, fully load that up, and we're just going to walk it around. The wheel could be a lazy Susan. It can be anything that allows you to turn the piece. Now, because this has little indentations or the scallop pattern, um, it'll take you some time to make sure you get down in there. So the wheel is just an aid to turning it to keep you moving. It's not necessary. I mean, you could do it without it. Just try to make sure you put the same amount of pressure, apply the same amount of pressure all around it so that you get the same. Probably should have done orange. It's not as easy on this scallopy edge. It just takes more time. Flip your brush over, back and forth, because you're pushing down, which is squeezing the color one direction. So when you rotate it, you'll get more color. Go around it a couple of times and then let it dry and then hit it with a third, maybe even a fourth coat, depending on your application. And you could do this with color stroke or concentrates, either one, because it's not going to be touching the shelf. Okay, so that should be 2 times. Adding a little bit more there just to kind of even that out. A little bit more pressure. All right, so I'll let that dry and I will do it again. So then you're going to fire this. Like I said, this is porcelain clay. So I'm going to fire this to 04. Then I will clear glaze it and then put it back into a cone 6 firing. Okay, this is another piece of white porcelain clay that I rolled out. And then this is the stencil that I put on when it was damp. And then I rolled it into the clay, just like I did the pumpkin one, the other pumpkin, the orange one, so that it was level with the clay. And then you go over it. I used the purple. This was 636 violet blue. And I brushed it on with a fan brush while that stencil was in place. After 3 coats. After it was dry, then I peeled up the stencil. Okay, so I thought on this one, um, I would take the same purple, the 636 violet blue, and then I'm going to use CC 143 sapphire blue, and I'm going to go back and do some accent strokes on some of these parts and pieces. Okay, so I'm going to fully load with the purple because that's what's in my background, and I'm using the Bavarian number 3. It's the series 500. You could use any 3 round, or you could use any size depending on. This is again a Sharon Hoppy stencil that she makes. She also makes the shapes, the forms, so that you can cut around it and then lay your stencil in it to create a design, which is great for those that maybe want to do something fancy but can't do. They don't like to carve. They don't like to do brush strokes. So there's all different ways, to achieve something. Now that blue is still, I thinned it down slightly, but it's still kind of thick. So I'm going to loosen that up again. Anytime you're double loading a brush, both colors need to be the same consistency in order for you to get a proper load on that brush. So let's test this. So I've got quite a bit of blue. Let me go back and get the purple. So I rinse my brush because I want to see both colors. There we go. So I want to see both colors through this. All right, so I'm going to put a sponge here that I can kind of wipe that blue off as I get more purple. So I'm going to put this on these tulip type flowers. So I'm just going to add a little stroke. In the center of that. Now the ones that have the design, it's not going to be as easy, but we're just going to add a little bit of color to them. I have another one down here. So I'm not starting at the very end. I'm starting a little ways up. This just gives you another decorating possibility. If you're kind of stuck and you don't know what to do with it, this may appeal to you. May not. Everybody is different. I can go back and carve out anything that I don't like. I think I'll add just a little stroke inside. Just for something fun. Of course, it's going to be easier on these because they're larger. This is just doing a press, pull, lift, just a comma. It's just most of the time it's going to be a straight stroke. This one will curve a little bit. I used GR Pottery Forms. This one has a rectangle. I think you can kind of see that if I turn it at an angle on the bottom. So this one has some leaves that are solid and some that are open. Leaves, petals, whatever these are, pods. Okay. And then we can put like a dot. And every time you load your dotting tool or your handle of your brush, if you load it for each time you dot, you will get the same size dot. If you continually keep dotting with what's on your tool, then you're going to graduate the dots and they get smaller, every one that you do. Okay, so if I dot here, here, come over here, and here, they continually get smaller as I'm doing it. So I'm picking out my larger ones and then working down to my smaller. But if I wanted them all the same size, I would just load for each one. Now there's some smaller ones up here. And this is my shaper tool. I'm going to see if I think I can get them in with it. It's just a smaller area. So this is the shaper tool. This is the number 6, which is a cone shape. They come in a set. We do have them available on the website. Great for wiping back color in areas. Fun. Love it. Love it. I could have shaded with that blue, but yeah, I don't think so. I think I'm going to just leave it like that. Just something fairly simple. Okay. I will put an edge on this, just like I did the pumpkin, the orange pumpkin, I should say. This is pumpkin. It's pumpkin stack. I'll probably just put purple around the edge of this one. Okay. Hope you enjoy this. Try it out. I look forward to seeing what you do with your Colors for Earth products.